Hey guys, tonight we're drifting back to a time when having it all meant 3 kids, a sparkling kitchen, and a secret Benzedrine habit that could make you clean the grout with a toothbrush at 2 a.m. That's right, tonight we're talking about the deadly Benzedrine addiction that turned 1950s housewives into jittery domestic superheroes and sometimes tragic cautionary tales. So, before you get too comfy, go ahead and like the video and subscribe, but only if you actually enjoy what I do here. Leave a comment telling me where you're listening from, and if it's past midnight, congratulations, you've just entered the golden era of insomnia. Now dim those lights, crank up a fan for that background hum, or the illusion that your bedroom is an atomic fallout shelter, and find the softest blanket you own. Let's get settled for a trip to suburbia, where the grass is always greener, the lipstick is always redder, and every pot roast is seasoned with a pinch of existential dread. Let's get curious for a second. Have you ever wondered what it actually felt like to wake up as a 1950s housewife? Did you think the worst part was the meatloaf? What happens when the pressure to be perfect meets a pharmaceutical so strong it could make you alphabetize your spice rack twice before lunch? Did anyone question why Mom vacuumed the ceiling? Could you survive a single PTA meeting with nothing but speed, instant coffee, and repressed anxiety holding you together? Would you last a week balancing Tupperware parties, soap operas, and a secret pill bottle hidden behind the flour canister? And how did we get from mother's little helper to full-blown disaster in just 1 decade? Congratulations. You've just woken up at 1955. You're in the suburbs. You have a starched apron, a fake smile, and, oh, look at that, a little Benzedrine to help you make it through the day. Good luck. You open your eyes to the gentle roar of the vacuum, the hiss of the percolator, and the distant, unwavering hum of possibility, plus a tiny amphetamine tablet fizzing away in your bloodstream. Forget snooze buttons. In 1955, your wake-up call is chemical, and your day starts 3 steps ahead and 1 nerve short. There's no time to linger under the covers. The sun is up. The milkman's already made his rounds, and the first kid has probably started a small fire in the bathroom. You swing your legs out of bed and your feet land on linoleum as cold and judgmental as your mother-in-law at Thanksgiving. The house is so spotless you swear the countertops glare at you if you leave a fingerprint. And that's thanks to last night's just 1 more Benzedrine, plus a little existential dread for seasoning. You're moving before your brain has caught up. Hands mechanically straightening a pillow here, smoothing a sheet there, making your way to the kitchen like a jittery homing pigeon. The radio blares soft jazz. At least you think it's jazz, but your thoughts are racing too fast to keep up with the tempo. Already you're planning breakfast, lunch, dinner, and a few emergency snacks just in case the kids' appetites suddenly double. Is this what superheroes feel like right before they save the world? Or is it just the sensation of your heart double parking in your chest? Hard to say. Down the hall, you catch your reflection in a hallway mirror. The hair is perfect, the robe cinched tight, but the eyes, they have that slightly haunted, over-caffeinated look that says, I will alphabetize your cereal and then fight God himself if someone scuffs my freshly waxed floor. If the neighbors could see you now, they'd probably ask for cleaning tips, or at least your doctor's number. Your husband is already at the kitchen table, reading the paper, and oblivious to the subtle art of chemically enhanced domesticity happening all around him. The kids bicker over cereal, milk sloshes onto the counter, and the dog is licking something that is, at best, a science experiment gone rogue. There's a sense of frantic, relentless forward motion, like someone pressed fast forward in real life, and you're just hoping nobody notices you're speaking at 1.5 times speed. Breakfast is an Olympic sport. You fry bacon, scramble eggs, pack lunches, and wipe sticky hands, all before the first cup of coffee even hits your system. There's a brief moment where you wonder what it would feel like to just sit. But the idea is so foreign it almost gives you hives. Why stop moving when there are baseboards to scrub, beds to make, and a perpetual invisible competition with every other housewife on the block? You wouldn't want Gladys from next door thinking you let the kids eat store-bought cookies, would you? The horror. The Benzedrine is kicking in, humming along with the fluorescent kitchen light. Every surface is an enemy to be vanquished. You wipe down the fridge, even though it's already clean. You fluff the curtains just so. The urge to start vacuuming before breakfast is almost irresistible. Almost, after all. There's a fine line between being a diligent homemaker and being possessed by the spirit of a particularly ambitious raccoon. Outside, the world is still and orderly. White picket fences, trimmed lawns, a uniform sense of perfection that stretches on for miles. But inside your chest, the buzz never quite settles. You're one missed to-do list away from a meltdown. But for now, you're a dynamo. Your greatest fear? That someone, somewhere, will notice the cracks in the porcelain, literally or metaphorically. So you carry on, lipstick at the ready, posture impeccable, smile just a bit too bright. In 1955, good mornings aren't gentle, they're a shot from a starter's pistol. You're off to the races, fueled by chemistry, competition, and a dash of controlled chaos. The day has begun, and you are already behind, but at least your kitchen floor is clean enough to eat off of. Even if nobody actually ever does. You float into the kitchen with a sudden urge to reorganize the spice drawer again. The kids want sugar cereal, your husband wants bacon, and you just want to stop grinding your teeth. The coffee is bottomless, the toast is burnt, and there's a bottle of Benzedrine tucked behind the flour for emergencies, and everything is an emergency. The kitchen in 1955 is your command center, your battlefield, your sparkling chrome sanctuary, and your prison. The first light creeps through the frosted window, bouncing off formica counters and the faces of 1,000 porcelain figurines that silently judge you from the windowsill. You move quickly, but not gracefully. There's a certain frantic choreography to it all. One hand pours orange juice, the other whips eggs, and your left foot is busy nudging the dog away from a growing puddle of spilled milk. The air smells like toast, burnt hope, and the faint chemical tang of instant coffee. The family trickles in, sleep-crumpled and unaware of the absolute circus behind their normal breakfast. Your husband sits down with the newspaper, as if he's reading for a Nobel Prize, oblivious to the bacon-shaped inferno developing 2 feet away. The kids fight over the cereal box prize, and you referee with the unblinking diplomacy of someone who's been awake since the Truman administration. There's no time for existential questions. Did you already feed the dog? Is this the 3rd time you've wiped the table this morning? Who can say? All you know is that every crumb feels personal. You flip the bacon with a precision only available to those running on speed, adrenaline, and maternal dread. The sizzle is satisfying, almost therapeutic, until you realize you've burned the edges. Again, your mind starts an internal monologue of apologies, counteroffers, and explanations for why crispy is really just extra flavorful. Meanwhile, the 2080 coffee percolator bubbles louder, as if cheering you on or warning you to slow down. But it's too late for that. Somewhere between the waffles and the Wheaties, you feel the pull to do something, anything, perfectly. That's when you find yourself elbows deep in the spice drawer, alphabetizing, reorganizing, and discovering 3 unopened jars of paprika. You pause, momentarily aware that no one on earth uses this much paprika. Then decide this is future use problem. The family will never notice, but the universe feels slightly less chaotic for at least 3.5 minutes. And let's talk about coffee. It is not a beverage, it's a necessity, a life force, the official drink of the American housewife. You drink it black, because who has time for milk and sugar? The mug shakes in your hand, not because you're nervous, but because you've been living on caffeine and amphetamine since the baby started teething in 52. You top up everyone's mug. Even the dog looks like he could use a shot at this point. The ritual is comforting. Pour, sip, repeat, never stop. The radio hums in the background with news, weather, and a cheerful jingle about floor wax. It feels like everyone on the block is already 2 steps ahead, their kitchens neater, their eggs fluffier, their lives more tranquil. You try to imagine what it would feel like to have a quiet breakfast. Just sitting, maybe listening to the birds, smiling gently at your family instead of inventorying your spice rack in your head. But there's no rest for the wired. Soon, the rush is over. The kids scatter. Your husband disappears behind a fortress of newsprint, and you're left with the aftermath. A battlefield of plates, crumbs, and half-eaten toast. You pop open the flour canister to grab just in case. But then you remember you've already taken your morning miracle. Instead, you wipe the counters again, sweep invisible dust bunnies, and try to silence the inner monologue that says it's never enough. And so, breakfast ends. Another morning survived, another silent victory. The kitchen's spotless, the family is fed, and your spice drawer is, temporarily, at peace. In the secret life of breakfast, no one sees the strain behind the smile, the anxious energy behind every bite, or the little bottle tucked out of sight. But you do, and for now, that's enough. Every surface gleams. Every dust bunny fears you. You scrub baseboards at 7 a.m. like your life depends on it. Because with Benzedrine, it kind of does. If Martha Stewart had access to speed, she'd still be behind. You start with the kitchen, because that's where the war on filth begins and ends. The counters are so shiny you could perform surgery. Or at least, you could, if you weren't already busy, buffing the chrome on the toaster. There's a method to your madness. Top to bottom, left to right. Every corner, every crevice. The smell of disinfectant is your signature perfume, wafting through the house like a promise and a threat. Even the ants steer clear of your place, and they'd rather risk drowning in the neighbor's lemonade than face your lemon-scented wrath. Benzedrine gives you tunnel vision, and that tunnel always leads straight to grime. Dust motes float in the sunlight like enemy scouts, and you chase them down with a damp rag, and the kind of vengeance usually reserved for tax collectors. The vacuum is your loyal steed. Loud, dependable, and wielded with the intensity of a medieval knight going into battle. The carpet bears no footprints. The linoleum shines with an almost religious fervor, as if God himself might drop by for an impromptu inspection. Spoiler alert, you'd be ready. The living room is next. Couch cushions are fluffed, dog hair is banished, and not a single magazine is allowed to peek out from under the coffee table. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the reflection of the TV screen. Hair pinned, lips pursed, eyes wide and wild. You wonder for a moment if this is what sainthood feels like. Except most saints didn't have to worry about fingerprints on the glass or crayons melted into the radiator. Still, you persevere. The sacred heart of your household is as immaculate as humanly or chemically possible. Bathroom? Forget it. You could eat off those tiles. The sink shines so brightly it could double as an emergency signal for passing airplanes. You find yourself scrubbing grout with a toothbrush, pausing only to judge yourself for not having started with the toothbrush in the first place. There is a special, frantic glee in attacking soap scum before it has a chance to form. If cleanliness is next to godliness, you're 3 doors down and mowing the celestial lawn. The kids' rooms are always a battle. toys everywhere, socks in places that defy the laws of physics, mysterious stains that raise more questions than answers. But you're relentless. You fold, you sort, you stack. If there's a world record for fastest sheet changing, you've shattered it twice before breakfast. You pause at the doorway to admire your handiwork, a small smile tugging at your lips, before being struck by the sudden, unshakable suspicion that you forgot to dust the windowsills. Again, of course, the Benzedrine doesn't care about your to-do list's length. It cares only that you never, ever stop moving. The relentless drive for perfection is half pride, half anxiety, and 100% chemical motivation. You're not just cleaning the house. You're defending your reputation, your sanity, your place in the suburban pecking order. Somewhere, someone's house is cleaner, but you refuse to let them win. Not today, not on your watch. Outside, the world looks on in admiration and mild terror. The neighbors whisper about your sparkling steps and your ability to host a bridge club on 10 minutes' notice. The postman wonders if you're part cyborg. You want to laugh, but you're too busy polishing the 10 doorknobs. By midday, you collapse into a kitchen chair and realize you've cleaned everything short of the family dog, who is now suspiciously shiny. Your kingdom is spotless, and for a fleeting moment, you feel victorious. Then you spot a lone crumb, just out of reach, and the cycle starts again. Welcome to the Benzedrine shine, a place where even Martha Stewart would need to up her game, and dust bunnies tremble in the shadows. You slip on your crisply ironed dress, apply lipstick with trembling hands, and hope nobody notices that your eyeliner is applied with the intensity of a stressed-out raccoon. Put together is a look, but wired is a lifestyle. You stand in front of the mirror, inspecting the flawless sheen of your A-line skirt and the perfectly symmetrical bow on your apron. The dress is starched to military precision. The apron, fresh and floral, gives the impression that domesticity is your true calling, even if your brain is currently running a mile a minute. Heels? Of course. Even though you're only moving between the kitchen and the living room, sensible shoes are for quitters. Besides, the click-clack on the hardwood makes you sound productive, even when you're just pacing with purpose and unfiltered anxiety. Your beauty routine is an Olympic sport. The lipstick must not smudge, the rouge must be healthy but not clownish, and the foundation must survive the splash zone that is breakfast with children. There's an art to looking like you slept 8 hours when, in reality, you spent half the night reorganizing the linen closet and the other half writing angry letters to the editor in your head. Mascara is mandatory. Spider lashes are a small price to pay for the illusion of alertness. The finishing touch is a mist of spring rain perfume, just strong enough to cover the faint chemical bouquet of bleach and existential dread. The effect is convincing from across the street. The uniformed queen of suburbia, ruling over a flawless kingdom of polished chrome and compliant children. Up close, there are cracks in the porcelain. Your posture is impeccable, shoulders back, chin up, smile glued in place like a department store mannequin. But there's a tiny, persistent twitch at the corner of your mouth, and the whites of your eyes could be used to signal ships at sea. You grip your purse as if it's a life raft, your knuckles whitening with each new item on your mental checklist. Part of the uniform is performance. The dress, the hair, the pearls. They're not just for you, they're for the neighbors, for your husband, for the world outside your window. A well-dressed housewife is proof that everything is under control, that no one ever runs out of bread or patience or matching socks. You know, deep down, it's all an elaborate ruse. You're one spilled casserole or missing hairpin away from total collapse. But as long as the seams hold, so do you. There's a hierarchy to the uniform. The early morning outfit is practical, cotton, easy to wash. ready for combat with oatmeal and muddy shoes. By 10 a.m., it's time for the public dress, the one reserved for grocery store encounters and unexpected drop-ins from the PTA president. If you're feeling particularly ambitious or especially unhinged, you might coordinate your earrings to the kitchen towels just for the private thrill of being the only person in the house who notices. Every outfit change is a fresh attempt at holding chaos at bay with buttons and bows. And then there's the ritual of the afternoon refresh. You spritz your face, reapply lipstick, and pray that nobody gets close enough to see the dark crescents blooming beneath your eyes. The heels come off for a few minutes, just long enough for your toes to remember what happiness once felt like. And then it's back to business. The uniform goes on, the performance resumes, and you continue your relentless ballet, spinning, dusting, and darting like a caffeinated ballerina inside a kitchen made of glass. The truth is, the housewife's uniform is less about fashion and more about armor. Each layer hides another worry, another expectation, another secret. The dress says I'm fine, the apron says I've got this, and the lipstick says I will not be defeated by a burnt roast or a PTA meeting gone rogue. Underneath it all, though, is the quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, someone will notice the effort. If not today, then someday. You take one last look in the mirror, smooth your dress, and walk out with your head high. Put together is what the world sees. Wired is how you survive, and with Benzedrine in your veins and hope in your heart, you are ready to conquer another day in heels, even if your soul is wearing fuzzy slippers. You blast through chores like a tornado in pearls, laundry, dusting, vacuuming the wallpaper, because apparently that's a thing. The Benzedrine makes you fast, but it doesn't make time go any slower. The house is quiet, except for the relentless background thrum of your own activity. Each footstep is a metronome, each chore a beat in a manic suburban symphony. You start with laundry, because in 1955, dirty clothes are a crisis on par with the Cold War. The washing machine shakes, shimmies, and rattles like a caffeine-addled bull. You haul out armfuls of damp sheets, the smell of bleach burning your nose, and slap them onto the clothesline with military precision. God forbid the neighbors catch sight of your unmentionables, one polka-dotted pair of underpants on display, and you're the talk of the block for weeks. Back inside, the vacuum roars to life. You attack the carpet like it owes you money. Every crumb, every lost Lego, every microscopic threat to your reputation obliterated. Then, for reasons lost to history, you vacuum the wallpaper. Is it clean? Was it ever dirty? No one knows. But you're not taking chances. If there's dust, you'll find it. And if there isn't, you'll invent some just to justify the effort. You wonder if the wallpaper appreciates all this attention, or if it's plotting revenge with the baseboards. You move on to dusting, the eternal foe. Every surface gets a once-over. The television set, even though it only plays 3 channels and is mostly used as a stand for flower vases and existential dread. The bookshelf full of Reader's Digests and Better Homes and Gardens, and the endless parade of glass ashtrays no one actually uses but can't throw away. You wipe, you polish, you buff until your reflection looks back at you and mouths, "Are you okay?" You answer with more dusting. Chores that should take all morning are done before the second cup of coffee is cold. There's an unsettling sense of accomplishment, a rush of productivity, and then a vast emptiness. The clock insists it's still only 9:47 a.m. Time, as it turns out, is immune to amphetamines. You check your list. Laundry, vacuum, dusting, check, check, check. You add, clean the windowsills just so you can cross it off and feel alive. The kitchen gets a fresh round of attention. You organize the pantry. lining up the cans with the labels facing outward like tiny soldiers in a tin-plated army. You alphabetize the spices for the second time this week, discovering yet another jar of allspice. How does it keep multiplying? And debate writing a stern letter to the spice company. The urge to mop the floor for the third time battles with the equally strong urge to color-code the Tupperware. You do both. Because why not? You're a multitasking machine, powered by the pharmaceutical equivalent of a rocket launch and the inescapable dread that someone, somewhere, is judging your grout. You tackle the bathrooms, armed with rubber gloves and a spray bottle of mysterious blue liquid. The sink sparkles, the toilet gleams, and the tub is so spotless it could double as a baptismal font. You catch yourself scrubbing the faucet with a toothbrush, humming a tune you don't remember learning. Maybe it's from a commercial. Maybe it's just the sound of your sanity circling the drain. By late morning, you've run out of things to clean, organize, or alphabetize. The house smells of lemon, bleach, and barely contained panic. You collapse onto the couch, heart racing, brain still sprinting laps. For a fleeting moment, you wonder if you could take a break. Then you remember there's a closet somewhere that probably needs refolding. You stand up, pearls glinting in the sunlight, and dive back into the fray. After all, in 1955, efficiency isn't just a virtue, it's a compulsion. And with Benzedrine in your system and the spectre of suburban judgment just outside your window, you won't be stopping anytime soon. You join the neighbor ladies for coffee. Everyone's got a secret, but yours comes in a little glass bottle. You pretend to sip, but really you're just hoping nobody hears your heart pounding like a faulty washing machine. The scene is set in someone's sunlit kitchen. Let's call her Doris, because there's always a Doris. The air is thick with the scent of instant coffee, Aquanet, and the complicated perfume of social performance. You take a seat at the table, smile pasted on, pearls glinting in the morning light, legs crossed in a way that says, "I'm perfectly relaxed," even as your foot taps out Morse code under the table. Everyone's mug is filled to the brim, and the conversation flows as freely as the caffeine. Did you see what the new family did with their lawn? Gladys's hydrangeas are looking a little wilted. I heard the milkman's been spending a lot of time at the Petersons. There's a practiced ease to this dance of words, a well-rehearsed choreography of subtle digs and strategic compliments. No one mentions nerves, or jitters, or the fact that your left eyelid has started twitching in time with the kitchen clock. You cradle your cup, the rim trembling ever so slightly. It's not the caffeine. Well, it's not just the caffeine. There's a tiny bottle nestled in your purse. And even though you tell yourself you only took half a pill, you know it's probably a full dose. Maybe even a bit extra for luck. You listen to the chatter, nodding, chiming in with, "Oh, really? And isn't that something?" while your brain buzzes with 1,000 unfinished chores. At one point, you're pretty sure you can hear the refrigerator humming in F sharp. Doris offers cookies, which you decline for the third time. Sugar makes the jitters worse, and you're pretty sure your heart could already beat a hummingbird in a foot race. Someone asks if you're dieting. Again, you flash a polite smile, mumble something about watching your figure, and quickly redirect the conversation to the weather, where it's safe and nobody can accuse you of secretly surviving on coffee, nerves, and sheer willpower. There's an unspoken competition running beneath the surface. Whose kitchen is the cleanest? Whose lipstick lasted the longest through breakfast? Whose marriage seems the happiest? You all say, "We should do this more often," but everyone knows it's just a way to keep tabs, measure up, and make sure nobody's slipping behind in the endless race to be effortlessly perfect. You catch Doris glancing at your hands, steady enough, you hope, You grip the mug tighter, willing your fingers to stay still. Is everyone this anxious? Or is it just you? No one says a word about nerves or pills, but you notice the occasional sideways glance, the discreet adjustment of a handbag, the sudden interest in a window smudge that wasn't there yesterday. The conversation turns to PTA drama. Someone forgot the cupcakes. Someone else overstepped at the bake sale. And for a moment you lose yourself in the soothing absurdity of it all. The petty politics of cupcakes is a welcome distraction from the tightness in your chest. You nod along, silently grateful for small-town scandal and low-stakes intrigue. Eventually, the clatch begins to break up. There are errands to run, chores to redo, and reputations to maintain. You offer to host next time, your voice just a bit too enthusiastic. As the ladies gather their handbags and say their goodbyes, Doris squeezes your arm and whispers, "You look so put together today." You smile, wondering if she's complimenting you or asking for your pharmacist's number. Back home, you take a deep breath and let the mask slip for a moment. Your heart is still thudding, your brain is still buzzing, but at least you survived another round of the suburban Olympics. In the world of the coffee clatch, everyone has a secret. Yours just happens to come in a tiny glass bottle, and nobody needs to know, as long as your smile stays steady and your coffee cup stays full. You sit in a school gym under fluorescent lights, scribbling notes at the speed of light. Are you taking minutes or plotting your escape? Either way, you're sweating through your cardigan. The PTA meeting is a theatre of war disguised as civic engagement. Rows of metal folding chairs scrape the waxed floor, amplifying every fidget and nervous shuffle. You clutch your notepad, fingers stained with ink, handwriting rapidly devolving from cursive into the desperate scratches of someone trying to send a distress signal. The overhead lights buzz. The principal drones on about the budget. You're not sure if it's the amphetamines or the institutional lighting, but you're convinced you can hear electricity itself. Around you, a sea of mothers, some with determined frowns, others with slightly deranged cheer, nod, and murmur in agreement. Doris from the coffee clatch is already raising her hand to suggest a bake sale, which means you're about to get voluntold to organize something involving 200 cupcakes, 17 allergy restrictions, and a vague threat of school spirit. The PTA president, a woman with a perm so tight it could probably withstand a hurricane, clicks her pen with the authority of a prison warden. You wonder if she's on Benzedrine too, or if her superpower is just undiluted resentment. You try to look engaged, but your mind is in 12 places at once. On your list, field trip sign-ups, lost and found inventory, and a hot rumor that Mrs. Wilkins' bundt cake is really just store-bought with homemade frosting. You jot down everything, not out of duty, but because if you stop, your hand might start shaking. Every time someone calls for volunteers, you accidentally make eye contact and feel your soul leave your body. Saying no is unthinkable. The only thing scarier than overcommitting is the social shame of appearing idle. The gym is an echo chamber for performance anxiety. Everyone is here to prove something: dedication, competence, maybe just the ability to get out of the house wearing matching shoes. You realize you've already agreed to 3 committees, 2 subcommittees, and a fundraising phone tree before you've finished your first nervous doodle. Each new assignment is scribbled in the margins, sandwiched between increasingly elaborate escape plans. There's a pot of stale coffee at the back of the gym. You refill your cup, praying for just enough caffeine to keep you upright, but not so much that you have to make a suspicious number of bathroom trips. The woman in front of you turns around to ask, "Are you okay, dear?" You beam back with a smile so wide it borders on aggressive. "Just energized," you chirp. knowing you're one misplaced question away from either an emotional breakdown or an impromptu TED talk about the dangers of overbaked brownies. Minutes stretch on. The principal is now outlining a new safety initiative involving reflective vests, traffic cones, and a complicated diagram nobody can see from the back row. You nod, write cones in your notes, and discreetly fan yourself with the PTA agenda. You can feel the fabric of your cardigan slowly adhering to your back, a patchwork of nerves and sweat. The climax arrives, open discussion. This is the moment everyone's been waiting for. A sanctioned opportunity to complain about playground mulch, parking lot etiquette, and whether or not the music teacher is setting realistic expectations. The atmosphere crackles with barely disguised competitiveness. Who will be crowned Queen of Parental Involvement this month? You're not here to win, but you're definitely not here to lose. Finally, mercifully, the meeting is adjourned. There's a stampede for the door, a flurry of whispered complaints, and a few side hugs that are equal parts camaraderie. And please don't talk to me until next month. You walk out into the daylight, blinking like a prisoner released from solitary confinement. Your notepad is full, your to-do list just grew fangs, and you're pretty sure you've agreed to bake 300 cookies by next Tuesday. But hey, you survived, pharmaceutical bravery and all. And next month, you'll do it all again. Maybe with less caffeine, maybe with a bigger purse for your secret stash. But probably not. Grocery shopping should take an hour. You're in and out in 12 minutes, with 3 weeks' worth of canned pineapple and no memory of how you got there. Every aisle is a racetrack, and the only pit stop is the pharmacy. You arrive at the supermarket with a list as long as your arm and the determination of a woman who's already cleaned the baseboards twice this morning. The automatic doors slide open with a whoosh, and you launch your cart forward like a contestant on a game show where the grand prize is simply finishing before your Benzedrine wears off. The fluorescent lights flicker, the muzak hums, and you are a one-woman whirlwind in kitten heels. The first stop is produce, but you don't pause to squeeze the cantaloupe or compare apples. You just grab, toss, and move. Each selection based on speed, not strategy. Somewhere deep down, you know you'll have to explain to your family why you bought 6 rutabagas and no carrots. But you'll cross that bridge when you come to it. Today, it's all about velocity. The other shoppers move in slow motion, pushing their carts with the kind of languid indecision that makes you want to scream or start handing out amphetamines as public service. You round the corner into the canned goods aisle, drifting your cart like you're in a Formula One race. Suddenly, you're struck by the urge to buy every variety of beans available. Garbanzo, kidney, navy. If it comes in a can, it's going in your pantry. You're not sure why you need this much fiber, but at this speed, rational thought is a distant memory. 3 cans of pineapple tumble in, followed by 5 jars of olives. Somewhere in the chaos, you remember that you actually hate olives, but the cart is already rolling toward the next aisle. The cereal section is an obstacle course of indecisive children and cart traffic jams. You cut through, channeling the tactical precision of a military commander. You have no memory of adding 3 boxes of shredded wheat. But there they are, right next to the box of animal crackers you haven't eaten since the Eisenhower administration. Your heart is thumping. Your hands are trembling. But you can't slow down now. The checkout lanes are in sight, and victory is near. But wait, there's one last crucial stop. The pharmacy counter. You sidestep a display of vitamins, smile politely at the pharmacist, hoping she can't see the wild look in your eyes, and discreetly ask for your refill. The pharmacist nods, her face betraying no judgment, just the silent, knowing weariness of someone who's seen it all. Prescription in hand, you stow the little brown bottle deep in your purse, tucked away like a forbidden talisman that keeps your engine running and your groceries alphabetized. Now it's on to dairy, where you snatch up 3 gallons of milk, A block of cheese the size of your head, and a suspiciously yellow butter substitute that claims to be heart-healthy but is probably 90% plastic. The cart rattles with every step, packed like you're preparing for nuclear winter, or at least a particularly chaotic week of school lunches. A quick glance at your watch tells you it's been 12 minutes since you walked in, and somehow you've bought enough food to supply a fallout shelter. At the checkout, you pile your groceries onto the conveyor belt with the efficiency of a drill sergeant. The cashier blinks at the sheer quantity of beans, pineapple, and cleaning supplies. But you just smile, sign your check with a flourish, and hustle out the door before anyone can ask if you're hosting a bean-themed luau. Outside, the sunlight is blinding, your pulse is racing, and you realize you forgot the bread, but you did remember the Benzedrine, so it's still a win. Driving home, your mind is already darting to the next chore. The errands never end, and neither does your momentum. The shopping's done, the pantry's full, and if you have to eat canned pineapple for every meal this week, so be it. At least you did it all in record time, with enough energy left to vacuum the driveway. You host a Tupperware party with the manic energy of a game show host, and the charm of someone who's definitely taken more than the recommended dose. You sell lids like they're lottery tickets, and everyone leaves with a strange sense of foreboding and a new sugar bowl. Preparation for the party starts early. The kitchen table is covered with color-coded containers, each lid matched perfectly to its mate, forming a rainbow of molded polyethylene that gleams under the kitchen light. You arrange snacks with military precision, slicing carrots into identical sticks and lining up cheese cubes like tiny edible soldiers. In the background, the radio hums with promises of a modern, hassle-free lifestyle, which is exactly what you're selling. One pastel burp seal at a time. Your guests arrive, handbags swinging, each one armed with a polite smile, and the underlying suspicion that there's no such thing as a free canapé. Doris, Gladys, and the rest of the Coffee Clatch crew file in, perching on the edge of the sofa, eyeing the display of stackable containers with the wary skepticism usually reserved for used car salesmen and traveling revival preachers. But you're undeterred. You've already pre-gamed with half a Benzedrine and enough instant coffee to keep a small marching band on tempo until dawn. You launch into your demonstration with the enthusiasm of a late-night infomercial host. Ladies, have you ever wanted your leftovers to stay fresh for days? Have you dreamed of a world where spaghetti doesn't become a biological experiment overnight? You click lids, burp seals, and stack bowls with flourish, your hands moving so fast the plastic blurs. You tell them that Tupperware is more than storage. It's security, it's status. It's salvation from saran wrap that clings only to itself and wax paper that tears at the first sign of resistance. There's a nervous titter of laughter. You pass around the newest model, extolling the virtues of airtight seals and the joys of matching pastels. Don't be the last house on the block to upgrade, you say, channeling both peer pressure and the existential dread of falling behind in the suburban arms race. For a moment, you wonder if you've oversold it, but then Doris asks for a second look at the sugar bowl, and you know you've got them. Each guest is offered a demo lid to try, the tactile pleasure of that signature Tupperware burp sending ripples of satisfaction through the room. You sprinkle in testimonials. My husband's lunch has never been fresher. Urban legends. I heard one woman kept a casserole fresh for 2 weeks. And thinly veiled threats. Imagine what the neighbors will say when they see your refrigerator. You even throw in a raffle for a free measuring cup. Winner to be announced only after everyone's placed their order. Naturally. Snacks are served, tiny sandwiches and jello molds so aggressively colorful they might be radioactive. You breeze from guest to guest, refilling cups, answering questions, and gently steering everyone back to the order form. It's not just about selling plastic. It's about maintaining the illusion of control, order, and modernity, even as you feel your heart doing the cha-cha in your chest. The shopping portion of the party takes on a life of its own. There's some friendly competition over the last celery keeper, a heated debate about the merits of the deviled egg tray, and a small crisis when someone realizes she's out of checks. You solve each problem with the zeal of someone who's not allowed to rest until every guest leaves with a matching butter dish. By the end, everyone's bought something, whether out of genuine need, social obligation, or fear of your relentless sales pitch is anyone's guess. They file out the door, cradling new containers, and quietly vowing never to eat leftovers again. The house falls quiet, the table is a wasteland of order forms and crumbs, and you feel the rush of both triumph and a deep, lingering unease. But hey, another successful party. Another small victory in the endless quest to stay ahead. One plastic lid at a time. You close the door, breathe deeply, and try not to think about next month's party, or whether you'll ever really need a celery keeper. You serve lunch but realize you're not hungry. In fact, you haven't eaten since Tuesday. Who needs food when you have Benzedrine, black coffee, and enough nervous energy to power a blender? The clock chimes noon and the ritual begins. The kitchen table is set with military precision. Placemats straight, forks on the left, napkins folded like you're expecting a visit from the Queen, or at least Doris from next door. The kids barrel in, clamoring for grilled cheese and tomato soup. Your husband, home on his lunch break, expects something hearty. A sandwich, a side, maybe a smile if you have any left in the tank. You move through the motions with the brisk efficiency of a short-order cook on a double shift. Bread toasting, soup bubbling, plates spinning across the countertop in a blur of mid-century modern dishware. There's a faint hum in your ears, a distant reminder that you haven't actually stopped moving since dawn. You pour glasses of milk with a steady hand, but only because your other hand is already scrubbing a counter. Multitasking isn't a skill. It's an existential necessity. Lunch is served, steaming and perfect, with just enough garnish to impress, but not enough to look like you're showing off. The children dig in with the rabid enthusiasm of Labrador puppies. Your husband takes a bite and makes a noise of approval that could also be a request for more salt. Meanwhile, you arrange your own plate, a single triangle of sandwich, a sprig of parsley, and a piece of celery so limp it could be declared emotionally unavailable. The plate sits untouched. Appetite is a foreign country, and you've lost your passport. Somewhere between the morning chores, the Tupperware party, and the PTA fallout, you stopped thinking about food as something to be enjoyed. Now, lunch is just another box to tick, another performance in the endless domestic ballet. The Benzedrine in your bloodstream is doing a remarkable job of turning hunger into an abstract concept, something you read about in magazines, right next to recipes for weightless salads and testimonials from women who claim to have lost 20 pounds by switching to filtered water and pure willpower. The others don't seem to notice. You fill your mug with coffee for the third, or is it fourth, time and join in the conversation about spelling tests, baseball tryouts, and the local supermarket's scandalous shortage of Jell-O. Your mind races ahead to the next item on your mental list. Laundry, phone calls, maybe finally getting around to reorganizing the linen closet. Again, chewing is optional, apparently. Occasionally, you pick at your sandwich for show. Maybe you even nibble the crust, hoping that the act of eating will trick your stomach into remembering what it's supposed to do. But the effort is wasted. Your body runs on chemicals and chaos now. Calories are irrelevant in a world where survival depends on staying in perpetual motion and never letting your guard. or your lipstick slip. There's a silver lining, though. In the 1950s, thin is in, and every women's magazine on the rack promises that being slender means being successful. Never mind the dizziness, the headaches, or the moments you have to sit down because you forgot how to breathe. As long as your dress size shrinks, society applauds your self-control, without ever questioning the shaky hands and glassy eyes that come with it. Eventually, lunch is over. The kids scatter back to the yard, your husband returns to work, and you clear the table with the energy of a caffeinated tornado. The kitchen is spotless. Your plate is still full, and the only thing you've actually consumed is a gallon of coffee and whatever is left of your own self-restraint. You pause, just for a moment, wondering what it would feel like to be hungry or to let yourself stop long enough to eat. But there's no time for introspection. The blender needs cleaning. The afternoon is already calling. And besides, with Benzedrine and black coffee on your side, who needs lunch anyway? The house is silent, the chores are done, and the void stares back. You try to read, but your brain is too loud. You start a puzzle, knit a scarf, and reorganize the pantry. Again, for the first time all day, there's nothing left to clean, cook, or alphabetize. The floors are polished to a mirror shine. The laundry basket sits empty and gaping, a rare and suspicious sight, almost accusatory, as if daring you to soil something just to maintain the natural order. Sunlight pours in through the kitchen window, falling across surfaces so spotless that even the dust motes seem to hover in awe. You sit, for a moment, in the living room, clutching a magazine you have absolutely no intention of reading. You try to relax, really, you do, but the pages blur before your eyes, words tumbling into one another, overwhelmed by the sound of your own pulse and the lingering buzz of Benzedrine humming through your veins. You flip the magazine open to a photo spread about fun summer hairstyles and try to focus. The model's hair is perfect, her smile serene, and for a second you resent her because she clearly doesn't know what it's like to polish the light switches or lose sleep over mismatched Tupperware lids. You move to a jigsaw puzzle, telling yourself that it's good for the mind, that it will help you wind down. But after connecting 8 pieces in a blur, you find yourself tapping your foot, glancing at the clock, and fighting the urge to rearrange the kitchen chairs by color, size, and emotional energy. The silence is thick. Even the refrigerator seems to hum louder, as if aware of your rising restlessness. Knitting is next. Surely the meditative rhythm of needles will calm you. You pick up the half-finished scarf you started in 1953, the year of Eisenhower and regrettable fashion choices, and cast on a few rows, but your hands, still wired from the morning's chemical encouragement, move too fast, too clumsily. The yarn splits. The tension is uneven. The scarf grows, yes, but it also wobbles like your resolve. The house, once so full of motion, is now a padded cell of enforced serenity. Outside, you hear a lawnmower start up 2 houses down. You briefly contemplate mowing your own lawn again. But there's no reason, and besides, Doris would probably call the neighborhood association if you started a second lap before Thursday. You wander into the pantry. Every item stands at military attention. Cans stacked by size, labels facing forward, a row of flour bags as pristine as new recruits. You rearrange the soup, alphabetical, then by expiration date, then by likely to be consumed during a nuclear event. You discover a can of creamed corn that expired in 1952 and, for a fleeting moment, feel alive with purpose. You check the mail twice. The second time, you consider reading the junk mail just for stimulation. An ad for a new vacuum cleaner catches your eye. promising even deeper cleaning for a more modern home. You pause. Could it possibly reach the place inside you that still feels unsettled, no matter how many baseboards you scrub? You make a list for tomorrow's chores, but the list is suspiciously empty. You try to nap, but your heart has other ideas, beating out Morse code warnings about imaginary crises. Lying in bed feels unnatural, like cheating at the game of housewifery. There's always something to do, even if it's just worrying about the things you might have forgotten. By mid-afternoon, the clock inches forward. The kids will return soon, and with them will come chaos, noise, and 1,000 little needs to fill. For now, though, it's just you, the echo of your own movement, and the endless, caffeinated hum of restless perfectionism. You sigh, stand up, and give the curtains one last, unnecessary straightening. Ennui, it seems, is the price of a perfectly vacuumed paradise, and as you count down the minutes, you realize the hardest thing about doing it all is surviving the silence that follows. You sink into the couch, watching glamorous women with glamorous problems. On TV, affairs are secret and drama is glamorous. In real life, your biggest secret is stashed in the medicine cabinet. The house, scrubbed to sterile perfection, is quiet except for the faint hum of the television. Sunlight streams through spotless windows and casts a gentle glow on the faded floral upholstery. You settle in, the afternoon's emptiness briefly held at bay by the flicker of the screen. On today's episode, Veronica is telling Gerald that she's actually married to his twin brother and may or may not have amnesia. A storyline so preposterous it almost makes sense in the context of your own overstimulated, underfed reality. The opening theme song is a lullaby, the only time all day you let yourself melt into the furniture without guilt. Soap operas are a safe harbor. Nobody on screen has to vacuum their wallpaper or worry about whether Doris from 2 doors down is judging the streaks on their storm door. Here, heartbreak is accompanied by swelling violins and always ends with a commercial break, usually for dish soap or instant pudding. You let yourself drift into their world, a place where the stakes are high, but the mess is someone else's problem. The drama is ridiculous, and you know it. But there's a strange comfort in the way every problem is spoken aloud, every secret eventually revealed, even if it's only for the shock value. You watch as Veronica dabs her eyes with a silk handkerchief, not a tissue in sight, then collapses gracefully on a velvet fainting couch. You attempt the same move with your own living room sofa, but the result is less tragic heroine and more exhausted ragdoll. The only velvet nearby is in a faded throw pillow that smells faintly of lemon polish. While Veronica pours herself a stiff drink in the middle of the day, unapologetically, and always in perfect makeup, you sip your 3rd cup of coffee, laced with a dash of anxiety and a sprinkle of self-reproach. You eye the medicine cabinet down the hall, where your own coping mechanism sits quietly, a little brown bottle that promises energy, focus, and a clean house, but comes with a silent tax on your nerves. On television, everyone's secrets come out eventually. In your world, the biggest secret is that you are barely keeping it together. The bottle of Benzedrine is tucked behind a box of cough drops, next to the cough syrup you use as a backup sleep aid for the nights when the thoughts won't stop spinning. You wonder, idly, what your soap opera character would be named. Bethany, maybe. Or Margot, always a little on edge, always perfectly coiffed, hiding nerves behind a dazzling smile and a fresh apron. Between commercial breaks, you flip through a magazine, pausing at an article on 10 ways to keep your man happy and an ad for the latest wonder cleanser. You glance around the room, everything sparkles, but you still feel dull. There's a gentle ache in your chest, part hunger, part exhaustion, part the creeping sense that your real problems can't be solved by a product or a plot twist. Back on the screen, the characters embrace, break up, or are threatened by a mysterious stranger with a European accent. You sigh, momentarily swept up in their melodrama, grateful that your own life, while overwhelming, does not involve blackmail, murder, or secret twin babies. At least, not yet. But the escape is brief. The commercial ends, the story resumes, and so do you. There's laundry waiting, dinner to plan, and kids who will soon return to fill the quiet with noise and mess. You turn off the TV, promising yourself you'll catch tomorrow's episode, as if continuity matters in a world where nothing is ever truly finished. You rise from the couch, smoothing your skirt, collecting your coffee mug, and tucking your secret a little deeper. The glamorous women will be back tomorrow, ready to air their sorrows in high drama. Your own sorrows will keep silent and tidy, just out of sight, until the next commercial break. School's out. The kids burst in. You help with math, referee a fistfight, and try not to lecture everyone about the dangers of letting your guard down. The peace of the afternoon is shattered at precisely 3:05 p.m. when the front door flies open and a tornado of sneakers, backpacks, and incomprehensible shrieking whirls through the house. The kitchen is suddenly alive with the sound of lunchboxes slamming onto the counter, the slosh of half-finished milk, and a chorus of voices asking, "What's for snack?" in perfect disharmony. The dog starts barking at the commotion, either in solidarity or just to join the fun. For a brief, horrifying moment, you wonder if you actually miss the silence of your midday ennui. You pivot instantly from solitary housekeeper to air traffic controller. The first crisis is inevitable. Someone can't find their math homework. Someone else found it and used it to mop up a Kool-Aid spill. There are tears, accusations, wild gesticulations, and at least one child running in circles around the kitchen island for reasons unknown to science. Your Benzedrine buzz now has to compete with the chaos of childhood, which is louder, stickier, and immune to chemical control. You line up snacks with the efficiency of a short order cook, apple slices, peanut butter crackers, carrot sticks, and, for the truly desperate, the last 2 cookies from the do not touch jar. The kids descend like locusts, devouring everything before collapsing in various states of exhaustion and triumph onto the living room carpet. You perform a head count and confirm that yes, all are present and mostly accounted for. No one is actively bleeding. You call that a win. Then comes the homework. Math is up first, which means you have to summon the half-remembered knowledge of fractions and long division that you swore you'd never need after high school. One child is weeping over word problems, another is building a paperclip sculpture, and a third has gone suspiciously quiet, usually a bad sign. You try to maintain patience, reminding yourself that yelling, "Just borrow from the tens column," probably won't make you parent of the year. Every interruption is a new emergency. A pencil breaks, a sibling taunts, the dog escapes out the back door, and somewhere in the distance, a glass shatters. You wonder, briefly, if your children are being secretly coached by a circus ringmaster, or if the chaos is just genetic. You try to keep your cool, channeling the calm authority of a 1950s TV mom. "Let's all settle down," you say, which only seems to inspire louder protests and more aggressive negotiations over who gets to use the good eraser. As the noise level rises, your mind flashes to the real danger. The creeping threat of letting your guard down. If you relax for even a moment, you know, the laws of domestic physics dictate that someone will use a permanent marker on the wallpaper or attempt to microwave a metal spoon. You try to deliver a life lesson, something about vigilance, organization, and the importance of always keeping your shoes tied. But you're drowned out by a chorus of "Mom, Mom," Mom, and the sound of the dog returning with something that definitely used to belong to the neighbor's cat. By the time the last worksheet is signed, and the last sibling squabble has been narrowly averted, you're left clutching a stack of graded spelling tests and wondering if anyone in the house learned anything today. The sun begins to set, painting golden stripes across a living room littered with socks, snack wrappers, and the remains of a truly heroic paper airplane. You breathe out, glance at the clock, and brace yourself for dinner prep. The kids, fed, educated, and only slightly traumatized, scatter like marbles across the house. You survived another round of homework, hysteria, and hyperactivity. Congratulations. You may not have taught anyone fractions, but you did prove that, at least for one more day, you're holding the line. It's 5 p.m., and you're making meatloaf with one hand and vacuuming with the other. The only thing holding you together is a relentless cocktail of stimulants, caffeine, and sheer maternal willpower. The kitchen is a war zone, flour on the counter, ground beef clinging to your wedding ring, potatoes boiling with the enthusiasm of a ship's engine room. The radio blares Perry Como, but even his dulcet tones can't mask the shrill chorus of kids arguing over who gets to lick the mashed potato spoon. You're on autopilot now, cracking eggs, shaping loaves, barking out requests for someone, anyone, to please set the table with matching forks this time. No one hears you, but you say it anyway. Repetition is the rhythm of dinner hour, and you're basically jazz drumming on the stove. Your left foot is pumping the vacuum over the living room rug, dragging the cord behind you like a stubborn pet. Crumbs, dog hair, and a suspiciously sticky patch that smells like grape juice are all sucked away, at least until tomorrow's onslaught. You pause, wipe your brow with the back of your hand, and realize you have no memory of when you last sat down. Was it breakfast? 1953? Hard to say. The phone rings. It's Doris, eager for the latest gossip and possibly a borrowed cup of sugar, even though you both know she'll never return it. You wedge the phone between your shoulder and ear, flipping the meatloaf with surgical precision. Yes, Doris, the PTA meeting was lively. No, I haven't tried that new detergent. Yes, Gladys's hydrangeas are still dying. You sprinkle breadcrumbs, pour coffee, and nod along, all while checking the clock with the anxiety of someone defusing a bomb. Time is elastic at dinner. The more you hurry, the slower it goes. The kids appear in the kitchen every 3 minutes, peering at the oven with the wide, desperate eyes of feral raccoons. When's dinner ready? Is it meatloaf again? Can we have ketchup with it? You answer each question with the patience of a saint and the tone of a drill sergeant. Because apparently, the difference between a domestic goddess and a public menace is just 3 skipped meals and a cold cup of coffee. You try to make the plates look nice, but by this hour, presentation is a pipe dream. The green beans are limp but edible, the mashed potatoes are a little gluey, and the salad is just iceberg lettuce with a prayer. You set the table, lighting a candle for ambiance, a desperate attempt to convince everyone, including yourself, that you still have things under control. Just as you're pouring gravy, the doorbell rings. It's your husband, returning home at the exact moment when you are least able to pretend everything is effortless. He takes in the scene. Meatloaf steaming, children shrieking, your hair clinging to your forehead like seaweed. Smells good, he says, meaning it. And you feel a small rush of relief that, despite the chaos, dinner will happen. You all sit, finally, as a family. Plates are passed, food is devoured, and conversation drifts from school scandals to whose turn it is to feed the dog. The room buzzes with the energy of a tiny, hungry mob. You try to enjoy a bite, but your hands won't quite stop shaking and you're not entirely sure you're hungry anyway. Still, you smile and laugh. covering the cracks in your composure with a practiced ease worthy of any sitcom matriarch. When dinner ends, you gather plates, scrape leftovers into Tupperware, and tackle the dishes again. It's another small victory in a day made of disasters narrowly averted and meals that, against all odds, made it to the table. The kitchen falls quiet. You turn off the lights, lean against the counter, and give yourself a silent pat on the back. Tomorrow, it starts again. But for now, you survived dinner. And in this house, that's enough to call it a win. The husband's home. The gin comes out. You pour a martini with surgical precision, hoping nobody notices your hands are shaking. The conversation is pleasant. The tension is biblical. Cocktail hour in the 1950s is less about relaxing and more about playing your part in a high-stakes domestic drama. You pull out the cut glass shaker, add exactly 3 ice cubes, a whisper of vermouth, and a generous glug of gin. With the poise of a magician and the nerves of a sleep-deprived surgeon, you stir until your fingers go numb. The martini glass shines. The olives are speared with military accuracy. Presentation is everything. Nobody needs to know that your hands are still vibrating from the twin aftershocks of Benzedrine and anxiety. Your husband sits in his armchair, the picture of after-work contentment. He asks, "Rough day?" And you say, "Oh, nothing special," as if you haven't vacuumed the wallpaper, hosted a Tupperware summit, mediated a playground dispute, and performed open-heart surgery on a meatloaf in the last 12 hours. He flips through the paper, legs crossed, oblivious to the fact that your smile is being held in place by the sheer power of will and maybe a little leftover hairspray. You take your seat across from him and lift your glass. The first sip is sharp, cold, and bracing, a reminder that you're still here, still standing, still capable of putting on a show. It's a delicate balancing act. Enough gin to take the edge off, not so much that you start ranting about Gladys's mulch or the existential horror of unmatched Tupperware lids. The conversation drifts, work, neighbors. The latest installment of mid-century American optimism. You chime in where expected, laugh at the appropriate moments, and try not to let your mind wander back to your to-do list, or to the bottle of Benzedrine tucked away in the bathroom, its contents now a little lighter than it was this morning. The room is bathed in golden hour light. Everything soft and sepia, like a Norman Rockwell painting that's 2 cocktails deep and quietly reconsidering its life choices. The children are momentarily corralled, one watching television, one feeding the dog, one plotting escape through the back garden. There's a brief, flickering peace, and you almost believe it's real. But underneath the surface, the tension simmers. There's a martyrdom in your posture, a sense that you've carried the weight of the day and now must carry the weight of polite conversation as well. Every "how was your day?" feels like an essay question you didn't study for. You give the highlights reel. The kids are fine, the house is clean, dinner turned out. You leave out the parts about existential dread, about staring into the void of the afternoon, about the small panic when you realized you couldn't remember the last meal you actually tasted. A second martini sometimes follows, poured with just a bit less precision, the olives now slightly askew. You joke about running away to Bermuda, and your husband laughs, not realizing you're only half kidding. You both play your parts, repeating the lines you learned from television, from your parents, from a culture that insists this is what happiness looks like. 1 strong drink, 2 tidy children, 3 loads of laundry, and a smile. By the time dinner dishes are done and the evening news flickers on, you're winding down, at least outwardly. Inside, your thoughts are still jittering, your nerves still frayed. The martini glass goes into the sink, the shaker back to its place of honor, and you steel yourself for the bedtime routine. Another cocktail hour survived. Another performance completed. If anyone asks, you're fine, just a little tired, just a little shaky. And as you tuck the children in, turn out the lights, and head down the hall, you remind yourself that sometimes pleasant is the best you can hope for, and the show must go on. Bedtime for the kids means another round of cleaning, prepping tomorrow's lunches, and, let's be honest, just a touch more Benzedrine for those last little things. You tell yourself it's the home stretch. The children are corralled into pajamas, teeth scrubbed, in theory, and stories read with the animated exhaustion of someone who has already given 110% today. The bedtime process is part lullaby, part hostage negotiation. There are glasses of water fetched, stuffed animals located, and at least one emergency conference about a monster in the closet, solved with a spritz of your best perfume and a promise that, yes, you'll leave the hall light on. Once the last protest fades and bedroom doors are temporarily shut, the house settles into that special brand of silence that feels less like peace and more like an intermission. You look around at the aftermath, toys lurking like caltrops in the hallway, crumbs sparkling under the table, and a kitchen counter that's rapidly becoming a geological cross-section of your family's eating habits. The clock reads 8:34, but you know the work isn't done. It just switched from visible to invisible. You retie your apron, sigh, and launch yourself into the sacred rituals of post-bedtime cleaning. Lunchboxes are rinsed and repacked with sandwiches, chips, and the faint hope that someone, someday, will actually eat. The carrot sticks. You inventory the pantry, squinting at expiration dates in the harsh glow of the fridge light. You start a note for tomorrow's groceries, then lose yourself in the momentary thrill of reorganizing the freezer by food group and emotional significance. It's around this time that you remember there are still dishes. You stack, you scrub, you try not to cry when you discover someone used the good frying pan to reheat spaghetti. The kitchen transforms, slowly, from disaster zone to orderly command post once again. There's a strange, meditative comfort to the repetition, the swish of the sponge, the stack of clean plates, the soft click of cabinets closing. But the mind keeps whirring, refuses to let go. There's laundry to fold, a dress to iron, a vague sense that something critical has been forgotten. You glance at the clock again. The urge to just stop, to let the day be over, is overwhelming. But there's always one last thing. And so you open the bathroom cabinet, eye the bottle with its familiar rattle, and take just enough Benzedrine to smooth out the edges for one more round. You start on tomorrow's lunches, slicing bread, carefully wrapping sandwiches, adding a note to one lunchbox just to remind yourself that you're still a fun mom, even as your handwriting trembles. You wipe counters, sweep crumbs, fluff couch pillows, and rearrange magazines with the intensity of a museum curator. The TV mutters in the background. News, weather, maybe a late-night commercial for floor wax that you actually pause to consider. The rituals wind you down and wind you up all at once. There's a calm that comes from the familiar motion, but it's a restless sort of calm, a treadmill you can't quite step off. You're exhausted, but you're also, somehow, too wired to sleep. Your brain ticks through tomorrow's calendar. Permission slips, meatloaf leftovers, the Tupperware order form you forgot to mail. There's always a loose thread, somewhere, and you can't sleep until you find it. Eventually, the house is silent. You tiptoe down the hall, check on the kids, breathing, covered, and finally allow yourself to shed the apron to dim the kitchen light. The day is over, but the hum remains, a low, persistent buzz beneath your skin, half chemical, half maternal momentum, spinning down, winding up. That's the rhythm of the 1950s evening routine. The world outside sleeps. Inside, you polish, prepare, and pray for rest. all while whispering to yourself that tomorrow, maybe, the last little thing really will be the last. You try to relax beside your snoring husband, counting sheep and worrying about everything. Intimacy feels about as spontaneous as a tax audit, and neither of you is sure how you got here. The bedroom, once a sanctuary, now feels like a polite hostage situation. The sheets are fresh, the pillows are plumped, and you've dutifully washed your face with cold cream that promises miracles. But beneath the soft lamplight and the gentle hum of the box fan, 1,000 invisible worries flutter around you like moths. The room is filled with silence, punctuated only by the low rumble of your husband's snores and the ticking of the clock that seems to get louder every night. You both go through the motions, teeth brushed, pajamas donned, lights dimmed as if following stage directions in a play you can't quite remember auditioning for. Your husband flips through the newspaper or a paperback western, glasses sliding down his nose, his focus absolute. You wonder if he's actually reading or just hiding behind the safe, predictable frontier of printed words. You slide into bed, carefully keeping to your side of the mattress, and pull the covers up with the solemnity of a flag ceremony. There's a gulf between you, a canyon of laundry, lunchboxes, and the ghosts of unfinished conversations. The kind of distance that isn't measured in inches but in sighs, polite, good nights, and the number of times you pretend to be asleep before he even asks. Physical closeness used to be a comfort, an anchor. Now, it's another item on the to-do list that never seems to get checked off. The prospect of romance feels about as realistic as running off to join the circus, or just running, period. You wonder if this is what marital bliss was supposed to look like. Matching pillowcases, mutual exhaustion, and a secret longing for something more exciting than synchronized toothbrushing. You try counting sheep, but each one brings with it a new worry. Bills to pay, lunches to pack, mysterious stains in the laundry, the low-grade anxiety of being off, even when everything looks perfect on the outside. Your mind races with tomorrow's obligations and the leftover dread from today. You glance over at your husband, still snoring, mouth slightly open, utterly peaceful in a way you can't remember feeling. You wonder, briefly, if he notices the distance, too. If he feels the odd, pharmaceutical chill that lingers between the sheets. A strange cocktail of amphetamines, fatigue, and the unspoken truths that collect like dust bunnies under the bed. There's comfort in routine, but also a kind of numbness. He reaches for your hand in the dark, and you offer it, feeling the gentle squeeze that says, "I'm here," even when conversation has long since dried up. Intimacy has become a series of negotiations. Are you tired? Do you have a headache? Should we try again tomorrow? Sometimes you just lie there, side by side, the distance palpable but familiar, a pair of synchronized swimmers treading water in a sea of flannel and unspoken feelings. You stare at the ceiling, tracing cracks in the plaster like secret escape routes. The urge to reach for the Benzedrine bottle is strong, not for the energy, but for the promise of quiet, a numbing stillness to smooth the ragged edges of another day. But you resist, knowing that sleep, real sleep, is the only real remedy you haven't tried. Eventually, your husband rolls over, mutters something half-remembered about work or car repairs, and you mumble a reply, neither of you fully awake or fully together. You listen to his breathing, steady and reassuring, and let yourself drift, finally, mercifully, into a restless sleep. This is marital bliss, 1950s style. Two people, side by side, navigating the space between togetherness and distance, bound by routine, resilience, and a love that persists even when the passion is drowned out by the soft, persistent hum of pharmaceutical distance. The house is dark, the clock ticks, Your thoughts are a jittery parade of unfinished chores and unanswerable questions. Sleep feels impossible, so you clean the bathroom tiles again. You lie in bed, staring at the ceiling. The world outside reduced to a hush, broken only by the distant bark of a neighbor's dog and the slow, relentless ticking of the bedside clock. Every shadow on the wall seems to twitch in time with your pulse. Your husband, blissfully unconscious, is serenading you with a symphony of nasal snores. You envy his talent for switching off, just like that, while your own mind plays the entire highlight reel of the day, complete with regrets, reminders, and next week's grocery list. You try every trick you know. Counting sheep, they turn into piles of unfolded laundry. Deep breathing, all you can smell is floor polish, and reciting the Lord's Prayer, but halfway through you start planning the seating chart for the next Tupperware party. The bed feels both too hot and too cold, the pillow lumpy in exactly the wrong places. You flip from side to side, searching for the mythical sweet spot where rest might find you, but sleep won't come. The Benzedrine that powered you through a day of vacuuming, PTA meetings, and perfectly pressed napkins now refuses to let go. Your heart tap dances in your chest. Your feet twitch. Your brain insists you forgot something crucial, something that cannot wait until morning. Maybe you left the oven on. Maybe you never mailed the permission slip. Maybe Gladys really did notice the water spot on the dining room window. There's only one way to be sure. You slide out of bed with the stealth of a cat burglar. The floorboards creak anyway, and for a moment you freeze, certain that you'll wake the entire household, but nobody stirs. Not even the dog. You tiptoe to the bathroom, squinting against the harsh light, and immediately zero in on the grout between the tiles. It's not dirty, not really, but it's not pristine either. You grab the nearest toothbrush, dampen it, and start scrubbing in tight little circles, feeling each flick of your wrist scrub away a layer of anxiety. There's a strange satisfaction in this midnight ritual. With every patch of newly brightened grout, you reclaim a small corner of order from the chaos of your thoughts. You move on to the faucet, the mirror, the rim of the tub. Every surface gets a loving, slightly desperate once-over. The rhythm soothes you. Scrub, rinse, sigh, repeat. You glance at the clock. It's 1:37 a.m. Time is melting, stretching into long, looping ribbons of restlessness. You imagine all the other housewives in the neighborhood. Are they awake too? Scrubbing, pacing, worrying in the quiet gloom? Or are you the only one still locked in mortal combat with insomnia, caffeine, and the ghost of unfinished chores? Back in the kitchen, you pour a glass of water, shuffling past the fridge light that glares like an accusation. You resist the urge to reorganize the pantry again, knowing that path leads only to madness and alphabetized beans. Instead, you sip, breathe, and stare out the window at the dark, silent world. So still, so different from the relentless buzz inside your skull. Eventually, exhaustion wins. You return to bed, sliding beneath the sheets with the slow relief of someone surrendering to gravity. You count minutes, the heartbeats, the tiny victories of each scrubbed tile. Your thoughts blur at the edges, slowed by fatigue, softened by the cool pillow beneath your cheek. As sleep finally comes to claim you, it's not the easy rest you remember, but a stubborn truce. A brief, hard-won silence in a day full of noise. Tomorrow, the alarm will blare, the sun will rise, and the world will demand your energy all over again. But for now, you let yourself drift, tangled in clean sheets and the small, sparkling comfort of a bathroom that's never looked better, even if nobody else will ever notice. The doctor says you look nervous and run down. His solution? More Benzedrine, maybe a tranquilizer for good measure. He's got a pill for every mood except happiness. You sit in the waiting room with a magazine from 3 years ago and a stomach full of vague dread. Around you, women clutch purses, cough into handkerchiefs, and try not to make eye contact. The clock ticks louder than any heartbeat. You scan the pages of Ladies' Home Journal, pretending to care about meatloaf recipes and vacation tips. But all you can focus on is the sense that you're falling apart from the inside out. The nurse calls your name and you follow her down the linoleum corridor, passing posters about healthy habits, none of which involve amphetamines, oddly enough. You take your seat on the crackly exam table, knees together, shoes off, a model patient in a dress you ironed just for this occasion. The doctor breezes in with the brisk confidence of a man who's never had to plan dinner and referee 3 kids at the same time. He asks how you're feeling, pen poised, not really waiting for the answer. You try to explain. The exhaustion, the headaches, the tight feeling in your chest, the creeping sense of panic that sits on your shoulder like a particularly smug parrot. "I see," he says, flipping through your chart. "It's very common for housewives these days." You nod, unsure if you're being diagnosed or dismissed. He asks about your sleep, terrible, your appetite, non-existent, your nerves, shot. He frowns, nods, and scribbles something on a prescription pad. "Just nerves," he declares. "You modern women do too much. A little pick-me-up should help. Maybe a mild sedative for bedtime, just in case." He writes with flourish, the way you imagine composers once wrote symphonies. Except this composition is made entirely of amphetamines and a thin layer of well-meaning condescension. You want to say, "What I really need is a break, or a vacation, or a partner who understands why the house being clean isn't just about dust, but about feeling like you have some control over the chaos." But the words die in your throat. Instead, you nod. The doctor pats your hand, reassuring as a doorstop. "Try to get some rest," he says, which is a bit like telling a tornado to calm down. He hands you the prescription and another round of platitudes. Eat well. Get outside. Maybe take up a hobby. You smile, thinking about your already full days. Laundry, dinners, homework, cleaning, smiling, holding it together with bobby pins and the sheer force of willpower. Sure, you'll just squeeze in a little oil painting between vacuuming the ceiling and solving existential dread. Back in the waiting room, you compare notes with Doris, who's also waiting for her nerve tonic. She shrugs, says, "At least the pills make it easier to get things done." You both laugh, a little too loudly, a little too bitterly. You know you'll see her at the pharmacy, standing in line with a clutch of other tired women, all clutching identical slips of paper and sharing the secret language of the overworked and underrested. You pick up your prescription and head home, the bottle rattling in your purse like a box of marbles. Maybe this new dose will make the days brighter, or at least blur the edges enough to get you through another round of chores, meetings, and the endless march of perfect appearances. You add the new pills to your collection, uppers for the morning, downers for the night, and a growing suspicion that happiness isn't available over the counter. Still, you take them dutifully because that's what you do. The doctor's visit is over, your nerves are taken care of, and you've been reassured that the only thing wrong with you is caring too much. You walk out, shoulders squared, ready to face another day, one pill at a time. You peer through the blinds, suspicious of everyone. Is Gladys across the street judging your rose bushes? Are the neighbors whispering? Or is it just the Benzedrine making your imagination run laps? It's a quiet afternoon in suburbia, which means there's absolutely nothing to do but worry about what everyone else might be thinking. The street is lined with identical ranch houses, each with a yard manicured to within an inch of its life. The mailman has already come and gone, the kids are at school, and your only company is the soft, insistent thud of your heart, which currently sounds like a marching band on parade. You lean closer to the window, careful not to wrinkle the curtains. Last week's ironing marathon will not be undone by a moment of nosiness. Across the street, Gladys is kneeling in her front yard, armed with gardening gloves and an expression that could curdle fresh milk. Her rose bushes are immaculate, blooming like a page from a seed catalogue, and she's glancing up just often enough to make you wonder if she's tallying every weed in your flower beds. You step back, just in case she saw you. Paranoia is a team sport in this neighborhood, and you are playing to win. You wonder if the grass is just a shade too long, if the hydrangeas are a touch too droopy, if the dandelion you plucked yesterday has sent a signal to its cousins that it's open season. It's hard to say. Suburban warfare is fought with hedge clippers, not bayonets. And the rules change depending on who's watching. You take another peek. Next door, Doris is watering her lawn with almost religious fervor. You squint, trying to see if her grass is greener, or if she's just using a clever shade of fertilizer and the power of suggestion. You convince yourself you can hear her whispering to the postman about the state of things at your house, even though rationally you know she's just asking about coupons for dish soap. The mind races faster. Are the trash cans perfectly lined up at the curb? Or did one go rogue after last night's storm? Is the American flag in front of the Petersons' house slightly higher than yours? Does anyone else hear that dog barking? Or will you be the one labelled high-strung at the next block party for mentioning it? Benzedrine doesn't help. It turns every ordinary detail into a possible crisis. The whir of the neighbour's mower becomes a pointed commentary on your own patchy lawn. The subtle clink of Doris's pruning shears is suddenly evidence of a secret contest you didn't know you were losing. You imagine a world where every leaf is catalogued, every weed is reported, every child's muddy footprint is logged in an invisible ledger. A car pulls up and idles at the corner. Too long, if you ask yourself. You lower the blinds another inch and mentally draft a memo for the neighborhood watch. Even though you're the only active member, you picture Gladys, Doris, and you, all perched behind curtains like generals surveying a battlefield made of Kentucky bluegrass and petty grievances. It's not just the lawns either. It's the unwritten rules. Don't leave your Christmas lights up after New Year's. Don't mow before 9. Never serve store-bought cookies at a bake sale. The pressure to be perfect seeps into everything, turning every neighbor into both ally and adversary. You remember last summer's 4th of July debacle when your sparklers fizzled out and Gladys's homemade apple pie won first prize for the 3rd year in a row. You catch yourself, heart racing, cheeks flushed. Maybe it's all in your head. Maybe it's just the pills. Or maybe, in a world built on perfect appearances and endless comparison, you're just doing your part to keep up with the Joneses and the Gladyses and the Dorises and whoever else is lurking behind the blinds. You step away, straighten the curtains, and take a deep breath. The lawns will survive. The neighbors will gossip. And you, armed with equal parts vigilance and pharmaceutical vigor, are ready for whatever fresh drama tomorrow brings, one perfectly clipped hedge at a time. Your hands shake, your heart races, and you start to wonder if maybe this isn't normal. You're losing weight, losing sleep, and gaining a collection of nervous tics. It creeps up gradually, like a stain on your favorite dress. At first, you barely notice it. You just chalk it up to stress, or the weather, or the mysterious curse of 1950s housewifery. But now, as you stand in front of the mirror, you realize your rings slip off your fingers and your cheekbones are suddenly prominent, as if your face is trying out for a magazine ad. You look great, people say, not noticing the deep purple crescents under your eyes. or the way your smile never quite reaches your eyes anymore. The energy that once powered you through mornings of laundry and afternoons of vacuuming now feels frantic and raw. Your heart does a nervous jitterbug, thumping in your chest whenever you pause for too long. You tell yourself it's just the coffee, or maybe the excitement of a new Tupperware line. But the truth is harder to swallow. Something inside you is fraying. Even your bones ache, a deep, gnawing fatigue that no amount of rest or restorative tonic ever seems to fix. You start to notice little things. You fumble the plates at dinner, drop your keys twice on the way in from the car, forget what you came into a room to do. You hide it well, in the same way you hide your little glass bottle of energy, behind the flour, under the towels, in the pocket of your best apron. But your body knows. Your hands tremble when you write grocery lists. Your leg bounces so much at the PTA meeting that Doris asks if you need to use the restroom. The kids ask if you're cold, because you can't stop shivering, even when the house is warm and the oven's been on all afternoon. Your sleep, what little there is of it, becomes shallow, full of jagged dreams and anxious awakenings. You fall asleep exhausted and wake up even more tired, feeling like you've run a marathon in your sleep, only to find your muscles still tense, your mind already halfway through tomorrow's chores. The scale tells you you're shrinking, your favorite dresses droop at the shoulders, but the only thing you feel is more hollow. Your doctor says nerves, your friends say just busy, and your husband, trying to be helpful, says, maybe you should take it easy. You almost laugh at that. Easy isn't in the manual for modern housewives. Easy doesn't get the laundry folded, the lawn trimmed, the jello molded, or the kids ferried to Little League on time. There's a new collection of tics, small and embarrassing. You pick at your nails, twist your hair, blink too much, tap the counter in frantic Morse code. You catch your reflection sometimes, pale, restless, eyes darting. You look like the before photo in a medical ad for something called modern anxiety. The scariest part is the moments when your body just stops listening. You feel lightheaded standing at the stove, or your heart pounds so loudly it drowns out the television. Sometimes, you snap at the kids or your husband and immediately regret it. Guilt sloshing through your veins right alongside the Benzedrine. Apologies come easily, but peace of mind is harder to find. You start to wonder what normal even feels like. Would you recognize it if it came back? Is it possible to rewind to a time when your thoughts didn't skitter across your brain like panicked mice? You try sometimes to go a day without the pills. The world slows to a crawl. Your body drags, your mind clouds, and you realize that the thing supposed to keep you going is the very thing pulling you under. You paste on another smile, stir another pot, and carry on. Because admitting the hidden costs out loud, well, that would mean facing them. And for now, it's just easier to keep moving. Even as the cracks widen and the spiral deepens, one anxious heartbeat at a time. You flip through women's magazines, wondering why you can't look like the cover models. The secret ingredient isn't moisturizer, it's a prescription. The glossy pages are a kaleidoscope of promises. Every issue offers 100 new ways to perfect yourself. 10 days to a tinier waist, how to have a spotless home and still look glamorous. 5 casseroles he'll love and you'll never taste because you forgot what hunger feels like. There's a woman on every page, smiling in a cloud of pastel chiffon, skin flawless and eyes wide with serene confidence. She doesn't have crumbs in her hair or coffee stains on her apron. She doesn't look like she's been up since 5 a.m., scrubbing grout and reorganizing Tupperware. You scan the beauty tips with growing skepticism. Apparently, all it takes is a little cold cream, some elbow grease, and an air of effortless delight. The secret to her radiance? Eat less. Smile more, and never let him see you sweat. You suspect the real secret is the bottle of pills tucked just out of frame, right behind the can of Aquanet. But the magazine isn't about to say that. Every page is an impossible standard. The kitchens sparkle, the children are clean, the dinner parties are carefree. You're supposed to keep up with fashion, with housework, with the Joneses and the Gladyses and whoever invented Jell-O salad. But no matter how many recipes you clip, how many new lipsticks you buy, or how many crunches you do during commercials, you never quite measure up to the girl in the glossy spread. You pause at the diet section. Lose 15 pounds by Labor Day, it proclaims, as if all it takes is a grapefruit, a skipping rope, and a breezy disregard for carbohydrates. You wonder if anyone has told the magazine editors that living on half a grapefruit and a thimble of cottage cheese doesn't leave much energy for vacuuming the ceiling. The before and after photos taunt you. They forget to mention the jittery hands, the racing heart, or the doctor's whispered offer of just a little something to keep you going. Then there are the advertisements. Housewives in pearls, vacuuming in high heels, smiling like they know a secret. You do know the secret. It's spelled out on the side of a prescription bottle, dispensed with a nod and a pat on the head. The magazine calls it modern convenience. The doctor calls it nerves. You call it surviving. Every so often, there's a profile on a real woman who does it all. She has 3 children, a sparkling home, a garden full of prize-winning roses, and a figure that would make Audrey Hepburn look like a linebacker. The article breezes past her actual methods. Lots of energy, she says. You wonder how many milligrams that translates to. You cut out a new casserole recipe and slip it into the folder, already overflowing with recipes you've never tried and probably never will. You try to feel inspired, but mostly you feel tired and faintly resentful that nobody ever prints articles like How to Pretend You Have It Together While You're Falling Apart or 101 Ways to Hide Your Shaking Hands at a Tupperware Party. In the end, you put down the magazine, feeling less like a cover girl and more like a contestant in a game where nobody ever explains the rules. The women in the pictures will never have circles under their eyes or emergency chocolates stashed in the sewing kit. They'll never know the satisfaction of a perfectly alphabetized spice rack or the creeping dread of another sleepless night. You remind yourself that real life happens off the page, that every flawless photo is touched up, every breezy tip is a half-truth, and every prescription bottle is tucked just out of sight. The magazine's mirage glimmers and fades as you set it aside. Step back into your not-so-glossy reality and keep going, one imperfect, honest day at a time. One day, the Benzedrine doesn't work. The chores pile up. The anxiety gets worse. The only thing scarier than being on speed is being off it. You wake up groggy, your limbs heavy as wet laundry. The alarm clock blares. The sun slices through the curtains, and somewhere, a distant vacuum is already running. Maybe in your mind, you fumble for your little glass bottle, the morning ritual as familiar as breathing. But something's off. You swallow the pill, wait for the familiar lightning jolt, but your pulse just plods along, stubborn and slow. The kitchen feels colder. The world feels heavier. Everything is a chore and nothing is effortless. It's a strange, hollow feeling, the absence of the usual buzz, the spark that kept you hovering just above exhaustion. The miracle that made you supermom, superwife, and suburban dynamo is gone, and what's left behind is unsettling. You shuffle through your morning, pouring cereal with a hand that feels disconnected from your body, watching the milk spill over the edge and not even caring enough to wipe it up right away. The house, once spotless, starts to slip. Dishes pile up in the sink. Laundry accumulates in sullen, judgmental heaps. You watch dust motes drift across the sunlight and think, I'll get to it later. But later never seems to arrive. The baseboards grow fuzzy. The vacuum stares at you from the corner like a pet waiting for a walk, but you just don't have the energy to care. Your anxiety, once blurred by the relentless hum of stimulants, now spikes and dives like a badly tuned radio. Your heart skips, your hands tremble. But this time, it's not from overdrive, it's from dread. Every task feels enormous. Making lunch, answering the phone, brushing your hair. The simple act of getting dressed is enough to make you want to crawl back under the covers and hope the world moves on without you. The kids notice first. Mom, are you okay? They ask. Their voices small and worried. You force a smile, but even that feels brittle. The effort's so much bigger than the result. You find yourself snapping over small things, spilled milk, a missing shoe, a half-finished homework sheet, then apologizing with tears prickling behind your eyes. It's not their fault. You just can't keep up the act anymore. Your husband notices next, coming home to a house that looks lived in for the first time in years. He asks if you're sick, if you need a nap, if something happened at the PTA. You want to explain, but the words stick. How do you say you're tired in your bones, tired in your brain, tired in a way that no amount of rest or reassurance can fix? Instead, you tell him you're just off today. He nods, unsure, and goes back to his newspaper. Desperation kicks in. You try another pill, maybe it's a fluke. You try two. Still nothing. Your body has called your bluff, demanding payment for all those borrowed hours, all that synthetic energy. The crash is slow, a creeping exhaustion that drags you down even as your mind keeps racing. Your body aches, your head pounds, and a fog settles over the corners of your vision. You mourn the loss of your superpower, but beneath that grief is something like relief. The compulsion to do, scrub, smile, sparkle is gone, replaced by a raw, unfamiliar quiet. You sit on the sofa, a dish towel limp in your lap, and let yourself feel the emptiness, the fear, and, somewhere in the back of your mind, the faintest flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, you'll learn to move at your own pace again. For now, though, you stare at the dirty dishes, listen to the quiet house, and let the crash run its course. This, too, is survival, even if it feels like standing still for the first time in years. The family notices. The friends notice. Even the cat looks concerned. The truth comes out in a swirl of tears, confessions, and a very awkward family meeting in the living room. It happens on a Tuesday night, because interventions never have the decency to wait for a more cinematic day of the week. You're just trying to fold laundry, minding your own business, when your husband enters the living room with the solemn air of a man who has something important to discuss. The kids appear, summoned by some invisible signal of impending doom. Doris from next door is there too, awkwardly holding a Jell-O salad and pretending she just happened to stop by. You know what's coming the moment your husband clears his throat and the kids fidget in the armchairs, all eyes flickering from you to the little brown bottle on the coffee table. You feel naked, exposed. Every sleepless night, every trembling hand, every desperate trip to the pharmacy suddenly on full display. The cat, perched on the back of the couch, watches with the keen, judgmental gaze of someone who's seen too much. Your husband starts with, "We're worried about you." The kids chime in, each in their own way. You're always tired. You get mad over little things. You didn't even yell when I spilled the grape juice. Doris, unable to contain herself, blurts out, "I found the prescription in the flour tin." There is a long, tense silence. You try to laugh it off, to make a joke about 1950s nerves and busy schedules, but the sound catches in your throat. The room tilts as everyone waits for you to speak. You look at your family, the worry in your husband's eyes, the confusion on your children's faces, the fierce protectiveness in Doris's determined chin. Even the cat, tail swishing, looks like she's begging you to say something honest. For the first time in years, you let yourself unravel, words tumbling out in a ragged stream. I'm tired all the time. I can't sleep. I can't stop. I just needed help. And the doctor, he just kept giving me more pills. Tears follow, the kind you've been storing up behind smiles and lipstick and perfectly pressed napkins. You admit to the endless anxiety, the hollow energy, the exhaustion that clings no matter how spotless the house or how cheerful the casserole. You tell them about the crash, how the pills stopped working, how every day feels heavier, how the idea of letting someone else see the cracks was scarier than any PTA meeting. There are more confessions, each one a tiny release, a sliver of burden lifted. Your husband squeezes your hand. Doris, fighting her own tears, pulls a handkerchief from her sleeve and offers you the Jell-O salad as a peace offering. The kids look uncertain but move closer, unsure what to do but knowing that something important is happening. Eventually, the talk turns to what happens next. Your husband suggests seeing a different doctor, one who might actually listen. Doris promises to help with the kids, or at least feed them questionable desserts until you feel better. The kids vow to try harder. Not that they understand what harder means yet. The cat, sensing a shift, curls up in your lap and purrs. The living room is filled with an odd sense of relief. Awkward, messy, but real. The truth is out, the secret has been named, and the world didn't end. In fact, the house feels lighter, the silence less heavy, the night a little less daunting. For the first time in a long while, you don't feel alone. There's still a long road ahead. New doctors, hard conversations, and the work of learning how to rest, how to ask for help, how to live without the miracle in a bottle. But you survived the intervention. You told the truth. And as the family settles around you, holding hands and Jell-O and one another, it feels, for the first time in ages, like you might actually be okay. The bottle is empty, the house is still standing, and you're left with the echo of your own footsteps. You start to pick up the pieces, one slow, shaky day at a time. Modern life creeps in, and so does a tiny glimmer of hope, maybe even sleep. At first, it feels like everything is suspended, like the house is holding its breath right along with you. The routine still marches on. Beds are made, lunches are packed, dogs are walked, but every motion is slower, more deliberate, and, strangely, more meaningful. For the first time in years, you notice how the sun warms the kitchen floor in the late morning, how the trees outside sway with their own secret rhythm. You're exhausted, yes, but the exhaustion is honest, not disguised behind a jittery buzz or a smile that aches at the corners. The kids, still unsure what has changed, start bringing home drawings that say, "We love you, Mom," in crooked, hopeful handwriting. Your husband lingers longer in the doorway before work, awkwardly offering encouragement and pouring his own coffee for once. Doris drops by, always with a casserole or a Jell-O mold, but now she stays for an actual conversation. Less gossip, more realness. Even the cat, once content to judge from afar, starts curling up beside you on the couch, purring in quiet solidarity. You spend mornings battling a new kind of silence, the kind that asks you to sit still, to be alone with your thoughts. Some days, the quiet is terrifying. Other days, it feels like relief. You rediscover things you forgot you loved. The feeling of grass under bare feet, the comfort of an afternoon nap, the joy of a cup of coffee that you can finish before it goes cold. You find time for books, for music, for the simple pleasure of closing your eyes and listening to the hum of the house as it settles for the night. But recovery isn't linear. There are days when the weight of regret presses down hard. You remember every missed moment, every snapped reply, every memory made through a fog of pills and panic. You wonder if your children will recall the years when you moved too fast, when you smiled too brightly and couldn't sit still for bedtime stories. Sometimes you feel grief for the version of yourself you lost to the pressure and the prescription. The you that never got to find out what it meant to just be instead of do. You start saying no, tentatively at first, then with more confidence. No to extra PTA duties, no to hosting coffee mornings you don't enjoy, no to the relentless pursuit of an impossible standard. You lower your expectations for the house, for yourself, for what it means to be good. The floor might have crumbs. The laundry may not be folded, but you are here, and you are present, and your children notice the difference. You talk to your doctor, to your family, even to Doris, who admits that she once hid her own bottle in a flour tin. You join a small group at the church, not because you're searching for salvation, but because it feels good to be among people who are also learning to let go of perfection. Sometimes you still miss the rush, the feeling of invincibility that came with being on. But mostly, you are learning to live at the quieter, softer pace that was always waiting for you underneath the noise. Sleep doesn't come easily, but when it does, it's real. Not a chemical blackout, not an exhausted collapse, but genuine rest. Some mornings you wake up, and, just for a moment, you forget what it felt like to be lost in the swirl. You get out of bed, stretch, breathe, and walk into your kitchen. Not perfect, but yours. And so, piece by piece, step by step, you move forward. The bottle is empty, but your life is slowly filling back up. With forgiveness, with presence, and, against all odds, with hope. By spring, the Benzedrine diet is working a little too well. Your favorite skirt sags, your rings spin on your fingers, and you accidentally moon the pastor's wife during a round of canasta. You tell everyone you've discovered portion control. Secretly, you're just too wired to eat anything that isn't coffee grounds or existential panic. You notice it first in the dressing room mirror at Henson's department store. The dress you bought in January hangs like a bedsheet. The salesgirl, eager for a commission, assures you that drapey is in this season, but you know the truth. You're shrinking. Your belt, once a snug hug at the waist, now needs a new hole. Your shoes feel roomy. Even your reading glasses keep sliding down the bridge of your nose. You pretend it's all intentional. Just a little spring cleaning for my wardrobe. But deep down, you know your closet isn't the only thing that's empty. Bridge club is where it really hits home. You stand up to fetch a fresh deck of cards, and the world stops as your skirt slithers down your hips in slow motion. There's a collective gasp, a clatter of plastic chips, and then, worst of all, a polite cough from the pastor's wife, who valiantly averts her eyes. You yank your skirt back up, praying for the power of invisibility and vowing to invest in suspenders. Doris tries to stifle a giggle. Gladys, with the timing of a seasoned sniper, offers you a cookie. You decline, mumbling about your new low-calorie lifestyle, as if sheer embarrassment might burn calories faster than Benzedrine ever could. Your appetite, once a reliable midday companion, is now more rumor than reality. Lunchtime is a pantomime. You move food around the plate, nibbling on carrot sticks, sipping black coffee, and pretending to savor every bite while your insides stage a hunger strike. The magazines all praise willpower, and you get compliments at the supermarket for your amazing discipline. You smile politely, clutching your can of diet soda. And try to remember when you last enjoyed a meal without doing mental math about calories, carbs, and caffeine intake. You keep losing, first the pounds, then the urge to eat, then, worryingly, the spark in your eyes. Your reflection is sharper, more angular. Your cheekbones, suddenly the star of the show. Friends marvel at your new look. You joke that the secret is portion control and relentless anxiety, but no one laughs. They just nod, perhaps a little jealous, perhaps a little afraid. The side effects pile up like laundry. Your energy, once boundless, becomes frantic and brittle. You lie awake at night, counting ribs and worrying about things that used to glide off your back. The weight comes off, but the fatigue never does. Even the cat gives you a wary look when you offer her a treat at 3 a.m. Both of you wide-eyed and overstimulated. You start collecting compliments the way you used to collect recipes. Obsessively, hungrily, as if the right number might fill the hollow you can't seem to reach with food. But the truth is hard to hide. Your hands tremble, your voice warbles, your skirt, well, the less said about the skirt, the better. So you pin your waistband, accept the praise, and tell everyone you're just eating sensibly. Inside, you know the real miracle isn't weight loss. It's how long you've managed to keep the act together. How you've convinced everyone, including yourself, that you're fine, just busy, just disciplined, just one more day away from feeling like yourself again. But as you sit back down at Bridge Club, cheeks burning, cards trembling, you realize you're not sure where the line is between healthy and hollow, between portion control and vanishing altogether. You just hope your skirt and your story can hold on a little while longer. Every Tuesday night, you and 3 equally anxious friends gather in the Lutheran church basement with lukewarm tea and an unspoken agreement. Don't talk about the pills, but the conversation always turns to nerves, fatigue, and how to fake a migraine to avoid choir practice. If anyone mentions Benzedrine, it's only in the same hushed tone, reserved for extramarital affairs or store-brand margarine. The fluorescent lights flicker overhead, humming in quiet competition with the rattle of the ancient tea kettle. Someone has brought cookies, store-bought, but disguised on a floral china plate. Doris stirs her tea with the enthusiasm of a condemned woman. Gladys fiddles with her pearls, and Marjorie sighs like it's an Olympic event. You settle into the folding chair, trying to relax your shoulders, which haven't left your ears since approximately 1954. This isn't an official support group. There's no sign on the door, no agenda, no leader, just a handful of women quietly trying to stitch together the fraying seams of their sanity. Each week, someone brings a new recipe for calm, whether it's knitting needles, a tattered copy of Reader's Digest, or, in a pinch, a deck of cards for a covert game of gin rummy. The table is a battlefield of nervous hands and polite half-smiles. The conversation tiptoes around the obvious. "How are you sleeping?" someone asks, and everyone shakes their heads in solidarity. "Terrible. Not a wink. I think I've forgotten how." Marjorie jokes about considering a nocturnal lifestyle. Gladys says she'd give anything for a full night's rest, even if it meant sharing a room with her mother-in-law again. You laugh, a little too loudly, and wonder if your own laugh always sounded this shrill, or if it's just the acoustics. Inevitably, the subject of nerves surfaces. Doris rubs her temples, Gladys fans herself, and someone mentions the new prescription in the same tone you might use to discuss a cousin's criminal record. "The doctor says it's safe," Marjorie whispers, "and everyone's doing it." You all nod, but nobody makes eye contact. There's a sense that saying the word out loud, Benzedrine, might make it real. might shatter the fragile pact that holds your little group together. Instead, you talk about the PTA, about who burned the brownies at last, week's bake sale, about the latest scandal. Someone forgot to use real butter in the church cookies. The everyday absurdities are a balm. Easier to laugh about Gladys's son colouring on the hymnals than to admit how shaky your hands have become, or how you sometimes forget why you walked into a room. You compare tips for faking migraines and debate the merits of lavender sachets versus just hiding in the coat closet for 5 minutes of peace. Some nights, the truth slips out sideways. Marjorie confesses to hiding in the garage to cry. Doris admits she once mixed up the dog's vitamins with her own. Gladys wonders if anyone remembers who they were before the laundry multiplied, and the anxiety became just another item on the shopping list. You all agree, in a rush of relief, that you do remember. But nobody goes into details. There's something sacred about this hour in the basement. Something that makes you all braver in the presence of weak tea and flickering light. You talk, you listen, you try to build each other up, even as you quietly compete for the gold medal in martyrdom. Nobody judges when someone admits to burning dinner or snapping at the kids. Instead, you offer hugs, extra cookies, and the reassuring reminder that you're all in this together. At the end of the night, you rise, gather your things, and slip back into your public selves. You smooth your hair, dab at your eyes, and vow to make it through another week. There's no miracle cure waiting upstairs, just the same chaos and expectations and little brown bottles. But in the basement for just 1 hour, you are seen and understood, not as perfect housewives, but as perfectly human. And for now, that's enough. It's science fair season, which means you're building a papier-mâché volcano at 2 a.m. with the focus of a NASA engineer. The kids are asleep, but you're painting lava flows and color-coding the baking soda with a devotion you've never shown to actual geology. The next morning, you show up with shaky hands and a winning entry, even if you have to resist the urge to explain the chemical properties of Mother's Little Helper to the judges. Science Fair Week begins innocently enough. The kids arrive home with a sheet of instructions and a head full of wild ideas. Build a working robot, invent a perpetual motion machine, cure the common cold. You try to guide them gently towards something achievable, but it's like negotiating with tiny, sugar-addled mad scientists. How about a nice poster on photosynthesis? You suggest. No, it has to explode, they reply. You sigh, reach for your planner, and mentally block out the hours between bedtime and sunrise for whatever comes next. Soon, your kitchen transforms into a laboratory. There are glue sticks, poster boards, and the constant threat of glitter in every crevice. Your child is an eager assistant for about 10 minutes, after which you're left holding the bag, literally, of flour paste. It's midnight when the true work begins. You tear strips of newspaper with military precision, dip them in paste, and layer them over an upturned mixing bowl, praying the structure will harden before the next school bell rings. Somewhere around 1:30 a.m., you realize you haven't eaten, slept, or blinked in the last hour. The Benzedrine is working overtime, turning you into a one-woman assembly line. You paint the volcano with the steady hand of someone who really shouldn't be operating heavy machinery. Each ridge and crater gets a personal touch. The lava is a mix of red, orange, and a little existential despair. You color-code the baking soda, because why not make it educational and fabulous, and label the vinegar bottle with instructions worthy of the Apollo missions. By the time the sun rises, you're running on fumes, caffeine, and the fragile satisfaction of knowing your volcano not only erupts, but also has a charming, hand-painted banner that reads, "Eruption of Excellence." The kids wander in, blinking sleepily, and gasp at the masterpiece on the table. You beam, fighting the urge to launch into a TED talk about acid-base reactions and the chemical miracle in your own bloodstream. At the school gym, the chaos is palpable. Parents stagger in with towers of poster boards and homemade models, all wearing the same haunted, over-caffeinated expression. The other volcanoes look lumpy, their lava hastily painted and their labels barely legible. You feel a surge of pride, then a wave of guilt. Did you help too much? Is there a special circle in the PTA for parents who technically completed 94% of their child's project? No time to worry now. There are judges, and you're determined to make sure your child at least remembers the difference between sodium bicarbonate and table salt. As the judging begins, you hover nearby, gripping your cup of coffee and answering questions with a little too much enthusiasm. Yes, it really erupts. Yes, the lava is non-toxic. Yes, we learned about volcanic gases and household chemistry. You stop short of mentioning your chemical advantage, instead offering a dazzling smile that says, "Please ignore my twitching eyelid," and focus on the hand-lettered poster. Miraculously, your child wins a ribbon, second place, but who's counting? You celebrate with a proud hug, hiding the fact that you're already planning next year's entry. Perhaps something quieter, less combustible, more conducive to actual sleep. You gather up your supplies, brush the glitter from your sleeves, and head home, exhausted but victorious. Later that night, as you collapse into bed, you realize the science fair is less about volcanoes and more about survival, yours and the kids. The Benzedrine-fueled chaos, the late-night panic, the overzealous parental pride. It's all part of the wild, sleepless, and occasionally explosive experiment called parenthood. And in this house, you've earned your ribbon. So tonight, as you tuck yourself into bed, free from PTA potlucks, free from vacuum marks on the ceiling, free from the unrelenting buzz of Benzedrine and the desperate quest for perfect pie crust, take a moment to appreciate the quiet. Your kitchen can wait. Your to-do list will still be there in the morning, and nobody expects you to alphabetize your canned goods before dawn. Because if there's one thing we've learned, it's that perfection is a moving target. And sometimes, chasing it just means running faster on a hamster wheel powered by anxiety and dubious 1950s pharmaceuticals. Those housewives? They survived by sheer willpower, wit, and enough caffeine to keep a marching band awake until Tuesday. They kept the world spinning with a forced smile, trembling hands, and a bottle of nerves medication tucked away for emergencies that never really stopped. But beneath the pearls and the red lipstick, there was a kind of quiet heroism, fighting through exhaustion, through unrealistic expectations, through a culture that thought cheerfulness came in pill form and that being run down was just a character flaw. Every day was a high-wire act, and even on the worst days, they found ways to laugh, to gossip, and to find connection in the chaos. So as you drift off tonight, maybe send a little mental thank you to the women who made it through the era of atomic dish soap, miracle diets, and the original energy drinks. Remember, you're allowed to rest. You're allowed to be imperfect. And you're definitely allowed to say no to any medication that makes you want to scrub the baseboards at midnight. History may be wild, ridiculous, and sometimes tragic, but it's proof that people, no matter the decade, are stubborn, hopeful, and endlessly creative. You made it through another day, and that's more than enough. Good night, sleep well, and may your dreams be free of Tupperware, unsolicited magazine subscriptions, and the subtle terror of the perfectly kept suburban lawn